The night the city drowned in rain was the same night Eleanor Wright finally admitted to herself that success could still feel like a hollow room with the lights turned off. From the top floor of a glass tower, she watched headlights blur into silver rivers below, her reflection sharp against the window, tailored, composed, untouchable, and unbearably alone. She had turned down every man who had ever come close, not because she hated love, but because love had once taught her how easily everything could be taken away. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because stories like this belong to all of us. Eleanor had built Wright Innovations from nothing but a second-hand laptop, and sleepless nights after her father's death left her with debts instead of inheritance. By 42, she was one of the youngest CEOs in the city's history, respected and feared in equal measure. Boardrooms fell silent when she entered. Magazines praised her discipline and independence. Friends whispered that no man could handle her strength. What no one saw was the locked drawer in her penthouse holding a faded photograph of her mother, who had stayed too long with the wrong man and paid for it with her dreams. Eleanor learned early that love could be a storm without shelter, so she chose walls instead. Every relationship followed the same pattern. Admiration turned into insecurity. Affection turned into control. The moment a man hinted that she should soften, slow down, or make space for him, she ended it. The city admired her standards. Late at night, she wondered if standards were just another name for fear. Across town, in a neighborhood where streetlights flickered and buildings leaned with age, Daniel Harper folded donated blankets inside a converted warehouse that served as a temporary shelter. He had never imagined his life shrinking to this size. Once, he had been a skilled carpenter with steady work and plans for a small business. Then came an accident on a rainy highway, a drunk driver, a shattered leg, and months without income. His wife, already fragile from postpartum depression, drifted away under the weight of uncertainty and never came back. What remained was his 6-year-old daughter Lily, with serious eyes and a laugh that still believed in miracles. Daniel took every job he could manage with his healed but aching leg, cleaning, repairing, helping wherever hands were needed. Pride had burned away the first night he slept in his car with Lily breathing softly beside him. What replaced it was a fierce, quiet determination. He would not let the world teach his daughter that love was unreliable. Their paths crossed because Eleanor had agreed, reluctantly, to fund a winter housing initiative after a PR advisor insisted it would improve the company's public image. She arrived at the shelter in a dark coat, heels echoing against concrete floors, already calculating how quickly she could leave. Cameras flashed, hands shook, polite smiles exchanged. It was all procedural until she noticed a little girl coloring at a folding table, her shoes worn thin, her concentration absolute. Eleanor paused, something tightening in her chest. Lily reminded her of herself at that age, serious, observant, pretending not to notice how adults talked over her. Daniel stood nearby, thanking volunteers, his movements careful but capable. There was nothing dramatic about him. No charm polished for attention. Just a tired steadiness that made people trust him without realizing why. When the tour ended, Eleanor lingered longer than planned. She listened as Daniel explained how the shelter worked, how families rotated beds, how dignity mattered as much as warmth. There was no bitterness in his voice, only a practical hope. He did not flatter her or mention her wealth. He spoke as if she were simply another human capable of choosing decency. Weeks later, Eleanor surprised her own staff by personally overseeing the expansion of the project. She found herself returning to the shelter, sometimes without cameras, sometimes staying long after sunset. She learned Lily's favorite color, watched Daniel repair broken chairs with hands that remembered better days. The walls she carried so effortlessly in boardrooms felt heavier here, less useful. When winter deepened, the city announced plans to close several temporary shelters due to funding gaps. Panic rippled through families who had nowhere else to go. Eleanor arranged emergency meetings, pushed budgets, called donors. Still, there were not enough beds. One evening, as snow began to fall, she offered a solution she barely recognized as her own. She had a guesthouse behind her penthouse building, unused, secure, warm. She could house one family temporarily. Daniel resisted at first, pride flaring briefly before Lily's cough in the cold air silenced it. When he finally agreed, he did so with conditions that surprised Eleanor. He wanted no charity without responsibility. He would help with maintenance, repairs, anything. He was not asking for rescue. He was asking for shelter. The first night they stayed, Eleanor lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds below, a child's laughter echoing softly, footsteps that were not hers. Instead of irritation, she felt an unexpected calm. The space no longer felt like a museum of success. It felt lived in. Over time, routines formed. Mornings overlapped in the kitchen. Evenings brought shared meals that were simple and warm. Eleanor watched Daniel parent with patience she had never witnessed, explaining the world to Lily without bitterness, without lies. He never spoke badly of the woman who left. He taught his daughter that people could fail without being evil. Eleanor felt something shift, frightening and fragile. She had always believed that relationships demanded sacrifice she could not afford. Yet here was a man who did not ask her to be smaller. He simply existed alongside her, steady, respectful, present. The question came not as a challenge but as an observation during a late-night conversation about plans and futures. Daniel wondered aloud whether people sought partners to fill emptiness or to build shelter together against life's storms. The thought lodged itself deep inside Eleanor. For years, she had rejected proposals, commitments, even vulnerability, convinced that men wanted to own her success or hide within it. She realized now that what she had been offered before were cages disguised as comfort. The real test came when the media discovered the living arrangement. Headlines twisted generosity into scandal. Investors questioned her judgment. Board members warned her about optics and risk. The old Eleanor would have retreated, cut ties, protected the company at all costs. This time, she hesitated. Daniel offered to leave immediately, unwilling to be the reason her life burned. Lily packed her small bag without complaint, eyes brave but wounded. Eleanor saw herself again in that child, learning too early that stability was temporary. In that moment, Eleanor chose differently. She addressed the board with a calm that surprised even her. She spoke about leadership, responsibility, and the hypocrisy of celebrating philanthropy only when it stayed invisible. She refused to let fear dictate her humanity. Some investors walked away. Others stayed. The company wavered but did not fall. Daniel stayed too. Spring arrived slowly, as it always does after harsh winters. Daniel found steady work again, his skills valued, his confidence returning. Lily thrived in a nearby school, her laughter brighter, her drawings filled with color. Eleanor found herself changing in ways no promotion had ever demanded. She listened more. She slept better. She allowed silence to be shared instead of filled. Love did not arrive as a dramatic confession or sweeping gesture. It grew in the ordinary moments, in trust built quietly, in the understanding that neither of them needed saving. They needed partnership. When Daniel eventually moved into his own place, it was not an ending but a milestone. Their connection had never been about proximity. It had been about choice. Eleanor visited often, sometimes just to sit on the floor and help Lily with homework, sometimes to talk about fears she had never named before. Months later, on an evening much like the one where the story began, rain streaked the city lights again. Eleanor stood by the window, but this time she was not alone. She understood now that shelter was not walls or contracts or even wealth. It was the decision to face storms together without erasing who you were. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that strength and softness can coexist, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and let your engagement